Good morning. My name is Mac Bain. I'm the current executive director of FONOM, and thank you for joining this morning's learning morning. We're starting a new year of these, and the fact is that you don't have to register for these mornings. They are free to our membership, but I did have 73 people pre-register for this learning morning. So I'm anticipating we'll have more people joining as we go along. We just all went through a municipal election, and lots of our councils have new individuals. They've also hopefully been invited to these sessions. I'll remind everybody that the sessions are loaded up to YouTube. They'll be probably there tonight or tomorrow, so that you can view them later, share them with colleagues around the council tables. Economic development is crucial to Northern Ontario, and all of our presenters today play an important role. They can't do it alone. They work with other economic development agencies, and you'll see that today. They'll also hopefully speak about the fact that they can't do it without the support of FedNor and Northern Development Mines and NOHFC and the other agencies like Community Futures in our communities. We've got so many dedicated individuals across the north that play an important role, and working alone is not something that any community, any individual does. They all work collaboratively together, so we're quite fortunate to have so many dedicated people working on behalf of our communities in Northern Ontario, and today you'll just hear from some of them. I'll play Vanna White. I'll still be the host, and I'll let Erin introduce herself and then her colleagues as well, and I'll share a screen, but I'll still admit people as we go through. Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you very much, Mac. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Christy Marnering, who's chair of ONEDC, for our introductory remarks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mac and FONOM, for inviting us to this important discussion. Economic development is so important to our communities, whether it's talent attraction, helping local businesses grow and expand, retain those businesses, attracting new businesses, tourism, community development. There's people working in communities doing very important work in economic development to help our communities grow and sustain themselves. So economic development is very important to each community, and there's economic development practitioners across the world. Basically, most communities have economic development offices or regional offices. ONEDC stands for Ontario's North Economic Development Corporation. We have no staff. We work collectively with the 5 major centers. And today I'm going to introduce you to my colleagues, Erin Richmond, the Manager of Economic Development in North Bay, Jamie Taylor, CEO, Thunder Bay Community Economic Development Commission, Rick Van Starveren, Director of Economic Development, Sault Ste. Marie, Meredith Armstrong, Director of Economic Development, City of Sudbury, Jenny Mylinen, Business Development Officer and Manager of Northern Ontario Export Program. So these are my colleagues that we work together, and together we are ONEDC. We work on pan-northern projects, and you'll hear about some of our projects we worked on in the past and are currently working on. So today we'll take you through the ONEDC mandate, history, and past projects. We'll talk about a case study, a Northern Ontario export program, which is a pan-northern program. We'll talk about member communities and individual projects that they're working on that we can learn from each other and all collectively work together to grow those initiatives in our own communities, and then we'll have Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Mac will swing back at the end of the presentation to go through the questions. So if you have any, please put them in the chat. We'll be happy to address them. And like I said, I'm Christy Marnig, CEO of Timmins Economic Development Corporation and current chair of ONEDC. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Erin to start the presentation.
Thanks, Christy. And if you don't mind, Mac, maybe we can advance the slides, please. And thank you so much for helping us with that today. Maybe I'll just say next as we go through so that we can move through them in time with sort of what each person is going to be speaking about this morning. As Christy mentioned, there's our overview for today. So if we can go next, that'd be great. Thanks. So, you know, by nature, if any of you know anyone working in economic development, by nature, you'd know that folks in this profession are somewhat competitive. And I think it's a general statement, but I've always found it to be quite true. And I think it's a very good thing because it means that the passion and drive economic developers have allows us to help our communities, help our businesses grow and be heard. But I'd also suggest that economic developers are strong believers in teamwork and in learning from each other. So despite any long-standing rivalries we might know about here in Northern Ontario, whether it be sports or the weather, ONEDC partners always share philosophy. And it's really important that you understand that despite the fact we're all competing for investment in Northern Ontario, we really do believe that what's good for one community in the North is good for the North. And often we'll hear the saying that a rising tide floats all boats. And that really is the approach that we take with ONEDC. We see the value in leveraging our resources. So that could be our knowledge base, our capacity to undertake work, and of course, our financial resources. And years ago, we saw an opportunity to be our own voice in promoting investment and trade for the North. At the time, we didn't feel that our region was being adequately represented. And so we decided to take some action. And we therefore formalized a group, as Christy mentioned, that we call ONEDC, Ontario's North Economic Development Corporation. And it enabled us to chart our own path forward and to work on projects that we have identified as being important to us and important to the region. So in 2005, representatives from each of the cities that you'll hear from today came together and we incorporated not-for-profit corporation. And Christy, of course, our current chair, was one of those founding directors at the time. In terms of our mandate, you can see briefly on the screen here that we wanted to focus on partnerships. We wanted to create and promote and implement partnerships that were great for all of our communities and for the North. We wanted to focus on programming, developing programs in response to the needs of our businesses. And we also wanted to have a formal structure so that we had an opportunity to leverage different programming and collaborate with our funders. And as Mac mentioned at the beginning, it's so important for us to be able to do that and work with the agencies and funders that we have in the North. And I know Meredith is going to be up next talking about some of those great collaborations and leverage opportunities. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that we were strategic in our approach. We wanted to make sure that we weren't creating an organization that was going to be administrative heavy. And so we wanted to have that strategic management approach to all the projects that we were about to undertake. Next, please, Mac. Thanks.
And this one's me. Thanks, Erin. Sometimes you can't find the mute button, so it's great to be here today. I do want to say thanks very much to everyone for attending today. It's a really wonderful opportunity to be here. So as Erin said, I mean, really, I think this is about standing together and amplifying our voice. And you'll see that we have a history of doing that over 20 plus years now. We really did learn that together, the 5 cities do have that louder voice. We can take the proactive approach to increasing awareness about Northern Ontario, our assets, our strengths, and our opportunities with our provincial and federal economic development networks. And our networks were very much receptive because we also were bringing them the tools, the value add that we all need to come forward. And certainly we see that more than ever today. Next slide, please. So you'll see this is a busy slide with a whole bunch of information on it. I'm not expecting you to read it today. I believe that the slides will be provided to you separately as well. But this really is an interesting slide because it shows the history of the initiatives that the ONEDC group has taken on together. And as Aaron said, in the early 2000s, the 5 cities got together with that shared understanding of co-opetition, as we sometimes call it as well. And in the early 2000s, it was about accessing opportunities to attract investment associated with call centers and back office. And in fact, that was the first kind of focus of the ONEDC network. Over the years, you can see that we have also been able to access funding at the provincial and federal levels for important studies and initiatives. And the idea is that one city on its own wouldn't be able to access the funding or have the capacity to get this work done in the way that all 5 of us together can do. And as Christy said at the beginning, you're looking at the core team of ONEDC. It is using the existing capacity, the existing resources of the 5 cities of the North. And I should say often these initiatives absolutely have pan-northern benefits for the smaller communities surrounding the 5 cities of the North as well. We're lean and mean, we're not administrative heavy. We meet to undertake the work and achieve the goals. And as Aaron said, we are always asking ourselves, is this a strategic use of our capacity? But we keep it informal. This means we also have very strong relationships with each other, and we can pick up the phone, have a chat, do that background research on opportunities that may come to us individually as well. We manage projects by meeting, supporting one city to take the lead on a particular initiative. That means that these cities have skin in the game. We are accessing funding. We have our own funding, leveraging significant dollars for each of the initiatives you see in this chart, for instance. And the burden falls to the lead community, but there are equal opportunities for participation and input in program direction. So we're always looking to be a sounding board for each other when it comes to the ONEDC initiatives. You'll also see that there's a broad range of sectors that have benefited from these initiatives, and that continues as well. Film and television is a really good example. I think all 5 cities and lots of the surrounding communities are at different stages when it comes to film and television, and some of us have been in it for longer, and we certainly support each other to actively pursue those opportunities that are a right fit and meet you where you're at now. And there is an opportunity for the other partners to come along as the fit becomes more relevant for them. So I think the other thing we're really excited about today is to introduce you to Jenny Mylinen, and we think that the Northern Ontario Exports Program is really a jewel in the crown when it comes to ONEDC initiatives. And I'm going to pass it over now to Jenny to take us through the history. Thanks, Jenny.
Great, thanks, Meredith. Mac, if I could ask you just to advance the next slide, please. And so Mac and Christy and everyone, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the Northern Ontario Exports Program. I think this is the first presentation I've ever done on the program where I have not had to explain what ONEDC is and how it really involves collaboration across the North to support companies really from Parry Sound all the way to the Manitoba border. So really appreciate the opportunity. The Northern Ontario Exports Program was started 12 years ago with the recognition that we actually have some world-class industry here. And so it was started focusing on the mining, supply, and service sector, recognizing that we had companies here who were expert in what they were doing and were only focused on their backyard. What that meant was, and we have all seen it, the cycles. So the program was started 12 years ago to help these companies start looking broadly. How could these companies be tapping into, at that point in time, a global mining market? They had world-class services. There are mines around the world that needed their services and products. How could we get them out there? So ONEDC recognized this opportunity and started the Northern Ontario Exports Program. So since 12 years ago, the program has now evolved to support small and medium enterprises from any sector who want to expand or begin their sales outside of Ontario. So as long as it's, I say, from Parry Sound to the Manitoba border, whether you're wanting to start selling in Manitoba or Mongolia, the Northern Ontario Exports Program is here to help your company. And I'm just going to talk about the kind of specific requirements for companies coming into the program, because I want companies in all of your regions actually applying to the program tomorrow. So just so we're all clear, we're looking for small and medium enterprises in any sector who want to sell outside of Ontario and who already have a track record. So we're not on the early stage commercialization innovation side of things. We're here to support the companies who already have a product and service. They've already been in market for at least a couple of years, and they're trending at least $500,000 in annual revenue. What are we here to help them do? So we're a grant program. We're a match grant program. And what we do is we provide both funding and advisory services and training programs to these companies. And so we have a number of opportunities for companies to come to us tomorrow to apply, ranging from export marketing assistance, working with advisors, consultants who can help them do training plans, strategic plans, train up their sales teams. I noticed on Meredith's list there that our Nevada storefront for mining supply and service companies, we actually have a physical office now in Nevada, Elko, Nevada, a really important mining market, where companies from across Northern Ontario can actually show up in Elko, Nevada and really drive their business development with that really important mining sector. In addition to that, we can also support inbound and outbound trade missions. So having foreign buyers come here, meet the companies in whatever sector it is, and similarly help our companies and associations and organizations go abroad to meet those potential buyers of our products and services. We've heard how important the collaboration is, not just amongst the cities across the north to represent all of the opportunity that we have here. We've also heard the importance of the various funding and the various levels of government in supporting an economic development driver such as this program. And so I do want to recognize what I particularly think is the strength of the program is that we're actually funded by all three levels of government. So in addition to receiving the funding from ONEDC members, we also receive funding provincially from NOHFC and federally from FedNor. So I think that shows an incredible buy-in from all levels of government. I'm just asked to switch to the next slide, please. Okay, so what? So we have a program, we've been around for 12 years, we've supported close to 600 export building projects, provided companies with up to $10 million in funding. Okay, what does that actually really mean? I'm going to focus in on the last 3 years because it's been a particularly interesting 3 years, I think, for all of us globally. So since 2021, in this particular phase of the program, we have provided 130 export building projects across Northern Ontario with $1.5 million of grant funding. Great, that's a really important metric and we're all really proud of it. But there's a few points I want to make about that. We're not just providing funding to companies. They're making significant investments because of the funding that we're giving to these companies. So depending on the type of project that we're supporting, for every $1 that we're providing to a company, they're investing another $2 in their export building activities. That's driving that's showing commitment, not only from the individual company level, but that's further increasing the investment and production here in Ontario, the marketing activity that they're doing here in Northern Ontario. So there's real skin in the game in the companies that we're supporting. And the skin in the game is because these are true export building activities. And so I want to talk about, just kind of really put it in real perspective of what is it that companies are doing with our support. And so on the screen here, I've pulled 2 examples from LinkedIn yesterday of companies who are currently away, selling their company, representing their products and services. So under our export marketing assistance program, we provide funding to companies so that they can go to trade shows, participate in trade missions, update their website, do their digital marketing, that tangible marketing that they need to do to connect with potential buyers. I can tell you right now, Exglow North America, a provider of LED lighting systems that make mines safer, today is at an event in Anchorage, Alaska, selling their products. I can tell you that Northern Wildflowers from just outside of Sudbury just returned from an important trade show in Quebec, where if you read their post, they said they were signing up new retailers on the spot at their booth that was supported by the Northern Ontario Exports Program. So these are real examples of what we're supporting companies to do so that they're driving business, which is ultimately delivering returns to Northern Ontario. So that's export marketing. The other piece that we support companies on is really on building kind of their operational capacity. And we help them do that by training, doing assessments of their operations, and developing plans to address those pain points, which are preventing them from either being more efficient, more productive, or more profitable. And so I've included two quotes here from two companies, just two companies that we've supported in this light. And they're demonstrating the impact that it's had on the company. So Melissa Nash at Miller Technology in North Bay, Miller worked with a consultant who came in and analyzed all their process flows from inventory through manufacturing. And as a result, Miller Technology now has completely what used to be disconnected departments within the organization, communicating better so that they're ultimately serving their customers better, they're more profitable and more efficient. One thing I really want to highlight is that the exports program isn't just here to help companies sell outside of Ontario. It's great. Yes, it's important that they're able to access these export markets, but there's something else that's really interesting that we've seen companies do, and we're seeing them do more and more. And that's diversify in the type of market that they're going after. It's something we've seen starting even 12 years ago. Companies might have been started focused on the mining sector, but they're realizing now that their artificial intelligence, Internet of Things solution is actually relevant in forestry. So with our support, they're tapping into a completely new market, not just physical geographic market, but actual sector. And so digital engineering in Thunder Bay is an exact example of what we've helped companies do. Digital, when we started supporting them a few years ago, they were focused on the grain elevator sector, which was really strong in Northwestern Ontario. If you look at digital engineering's website net today, yes, sure, they're still focused on a bit of agricultural. Now they're going after power engineering, power distribution. That's a global industry. It's connected to the increase in the renewable energy sector. They're looking at mining. So we've also supported these companies to pivot and diversify so that ultimately those cycles that the program was originally started to kind of flatten out is happening within these individual companies and ergo across Northern Ontario. Right. What's the ultimate objective here? It's returns to Northern Ontario. We're supporting companies, they're selling outside, they're becoming more efficient. But what's coming back to Northern Ontario? This is a taxpayer funded program. Look at these results that companies just in the past 3 years are projecting. These 130 projects that we've supported. Short-term sales, $7 million. Long-term projected sales coming out of this, $62 million. These are Northern Ontario-based companies. This is revenue coming back to Northern Ontario. Employment. Look at these job figures. 136 new positions expected to be created, 546 maintained. For Northern Ontario, that's huge. And that's just within the last 3 years. And so I think the concluding piece I want to say is that if you've got companies in your region, please let them know about this program so that they can apply, because they too can be seeing these returns. But what I want to finish with is that we started 12 years ago. We've especially seen the importance of this kind of support for companies pan-Northern in a pandemic. These are sales figures, and these are employment figures, and these are project figures, which happened in a pandemic. So in 2021, 2020, coming into the pandemic, companies had a particular game plan, right? We all did. They were coming to us and saying, great, we're going to trade shows, we're going abroad, we're doing regular business. Excellent, that's what we supported them to do. A few months later, all of that came to a halt. So what did we do? We pivoted along with them And we're able to support them to increasingly sell digitally, get online, do that social selling, so that we're actually able to more successfully ride out the pandemic. Pandemic's not over quite yet, but we're seeing what looks like a fairly regular return to business. Companies are now, like I said, they're going abroad. So the program has supported companies not just to go abroad, diversify, but we've also supported them through the pandemic, which I think is something that ONEDC can be really, really proud of. I'm certainly proud to be part of the program. Look forward to answering any questions you have, and I certainly look forward to speaking with the companies from your respective region. Thank you for the opportunity.
Christy, you're on mute.
Sorry, forgot that. Next, I'll talk about the Timmins Housing Task Force. But before I do that, I just want to give a shout out to Sudbury for leading the Northern Ontario Exports Program. It's been a very, very successful program. They've reached out to businesses in all our communities. They've done a tremendous job, and it just goes to show when we work collaboratively, how important that result can ultimately become. So I'd just like to give a shout out to our colleague, because it's been one of our most successful projects, and under their leadership, we've been able to be successful. So it takes a lot of work to lead these projects. It's not simple. It does put a lot of stress on the existing staff and the new staff to get the project done. So it's a lot of work. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of ONEDC for that. So next I'll talk about Timmins, and one of the things we recently did with the Economic Development Board was we reached out to stakeholders across the community to say, what are some key important things that we need to be doing in Timmins? And one of the things that came up was housing. There is a shortage of new builds in Timmins, and there is existing stock that is being left aside, not being remodeled. So we want to save existing stock, we want to remodel stock, and we want to have new builds. There are people that want to move to our community, but we don't have the houses available for them. We haven't had many new housing starts in probably 20 years. So it's really important, and the stakeholders suggested that we work collectively to start a task force. We don't have a lot of builders that are looking to develop in Timmins. In Southern Ontario, they're building houses left, right, and center, but that's not the case in Timmins. So we decided we would work together. We're starting in the new year, and we're working with the local district social services administration board. We're working with the real estate association, the construction association, CMHA, who have housing here as well. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce. We're working with I think I said the Real Estate Association. So we have a large pool of groups. Also, we're working with the Indigenous organizations that focus on housing for Indigenous members of our community. So we all are going to work together collectively to look at how we can help each other for funding, to access funding provincially or federally. So we work collectively so that we can start new housing builds in Timmins. It's really important to note that in some smaller communities, Timmins does not have a high enough percentage. A lot of the developers say to us that to build a single residential unit, there's not enough profit in it for them. They need multi-residential units. They need new higher density units. So that's something we need to work with. We may need to change plans of subdivision. We may need to do RFPs. We may even need the municipality to put the services in as a caveat to allow developers to make some additional profit and want to build these units. So we are starting in the new year, so I don't have any examples yet, but this is something we're facing in Timmins because we don't have a lot of developers. So some of the smaller communities may want to work collectively as a group to see what is possible. And we're also going to look at our CIP, and Aaron's going to talk about that later and see what tools we can bring through our CIP to maybe add additional housing in Timmins. So that's just one of the projects we're working on. Next slide.
Good morning. Thanks everybody for attending today. Just want to give you a little bit of an update on Sault Ste. Marie. As you may or may not know, Sault Ste. Marie is a community of a little over 72,000 people. We are situated on the St. Mary's River and are a bona fide border community. So within about 7 minutes, I can be in the USA, jump on I-75 and drive all the way down to Florida without having to turn off that road at any stop. So it's an interesting place to be. We have a number of initiatives going on right now. We are the self-proclaimed green energy capital of North America, and we're quite proud of that. As I say, it is self-proclaimed, but we do draw energy from solar, we draw energy from wind farms, we draw energy from hydroelectric, and continue to develop those. And I've got a list of a few projects there on the screen. One of the areas that we're exploring at this point in time from a green energy perspective is the production of green hydrogen. And as you may or may not know, green hydrogen really is one of the, we're going to say, fuels of the future. I think that this is something that, you know, every community in Northern Ontario will benefit from should we get the production underway. So we're definitely taking a hard look at green hydrogen and the production. We just hosted a company from Australia who was looking at green hydrogen generation and potentially putting plants in. So some more to follow on that one. Another area that we've been looking at quite closely, and I know other communities in the north are as well, is the utilization of biomass. As you know, Northern Ontario is covered predominantly by forest, and logging is a major event and business that we have here. And from logging, one of the byproducts obviously is biomass, wood on the ground that's left over from the harvesting of the trees. So we are exploring with partners in Thunder Bay and different areas, how do we utilize that biomass and what technologies will help us get biomass a larger part of the future. You know, we're all striving for zero carbon emissions by 2050, and this will be a big part of that solution. So working with our partners, we expect to be able to start demonstrating some actual projects that will be utilizing biomass and forest waste. The other side of that is, and it goes back to Christy talking about housing, timber is now becoming quite the construction material, and mass timber can make for a very quick putting up of a building. So everything is prefabbed with mass timber. And it can provide a great housing solution across the board, whether it's going to be for condos, whether it's going to be for subsidized housing, whatever the solution. So we are looking at that right now and looking at bringing some, potentially bringing some mass timber buildings into the area. The final thing I just wanted to touch on, because we are talking about green here, is that Algoma Steel, as you may or may not know, steel is one of the major industries in Sault Ste. Marie, and they are now converting their coke ovens to an actual electric solution, which will be incredible for the environment. It's an actual 70% reduction in GHG. The numbers I've heard quoted is it will actually reduce the GHGs in Canada by approximately 8%. So wonderful project that they have going on, and we look forward to having a long relationship with them. You can see by the pictures here as well that we do have the locks down on the bottom, Soo locks, which connect Lake Superior to the rest of the Great Lakes and provide access all the way out to the rest of the world, because you can go straight up the St. Lawrence Seaway and off to the world you go. And that basically is where we are at this point in time, and we will continue to drive energy projects and work with our partners and look at the future. So thank you very much for your time today, and I'll turn it over now to who's up next. Let's see, Thunder Bay. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. So Thunder Bay, we have a lot of exciting things happening in Thunder Bay, but what I want to highlight for you today is something that we're really proud of. Thunder Bay has been working on attracting cruise ships, I think, for over 10 years. My team has been hustling and hustling, and it finally came to fruition. And this year, we were actually able to see it all come to fruition with the arrival of Viking cruise ships to our port. So in 2022, Thunder Bay was one of 3 Great Lakes turnaround ports for Viking cruises. We saw 2 different ships come here, and the largest held about 378 passengers and 275 crew members. So that was a big influx of people coming to our community. There were 2, so in 2022, we had 9 vessel visits in total. So that's 2 ships, 7 turnarounds, and 2 day stops. So one of the things that we had to do was really work hard with Viking in creating really quality shore activities. That was really key in attracting them to our community. Some of the visits included, if you're familiar with Thunder Bay, a visit to Kekabeka Falls, which is our Niagara Falls of the North, as well as Old Fort William, our historical park. And one thing that we're really proud of is we were actually named the top excursion for our visit to Silver Islet, which is a small hamlet just outside of Thunder Bay. So what they did at Silver Islet is we provided history tours of the Silver Islet cottages. There were a number of different hiking tours going through the Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, visits to the famous Silver Islet store that has just been restored. There were kayaking excursions. And then something that made it really special, because there's only a number of spots where Viking can deploy some of their submersibles and take a look at. So Thunder Bay was one of those spots that we were able to do that. So they were able to take a look at some of the what the Great Lakes can offer. We have a Silver Islet mine shaft that they were able to explore, and that gave us the top rating, which was really, really kind of a coup to Thunder Bay. So we were very proud of that. For 2023, we have confirmed another 11 vessel visits. So that'll be 3 ships, 3 turnarounds, and 8 day stops. So we're really excited about that. And we recently hosted 6 cruise operators this July in Thunder Bay on a Lake Superior familiarization tour. And we're happy that that was very successful because we now have 2 operators confirmed for 2024 and 2025. So why is all this important to our community and to the Thunder Bay CDC? Well, let's take a look at those impacts. Cruise shipping has definitely some great impacts for our community. We saw 72 local businesses benefiting from the cruise shipping, and that's anything from food services. Viking was very good at trying to use local products and filling up while they were here. But also it's like the full gamut, right? We had different from the excursion events. You can see we have in one of the pictures, we have bagpipers, but we also have services such as waste disposal. So a lot of businesses were able to benefit, which was great. And that created approximately 90 full-time equivalent jobs in our community. We estimated that for this season, the local economic impact was around $6 million, which is great. We want to celebrate that and spread the word about that. And we earned over $10 million in estimated global earned media value. It really created a momentum, even in the community. It was really exciting to see how many people came down to the waterfront to see the cruise ship come in. And sometimes if you, like there's lots of publicity around, it was always on the radio, like the cruise ship's coming in this weekend, the cruise ship's coming in this weekend, but sometimes it surprised you. You were just driving by and you could see the cruise ship come in. So it was really amazing and the community really got behind it. So some of the things that we had to do, how we achieved the cruise ships, some of the other aspects is we needed to do some work at our dock. So we were able to leverage about 2.5 million from NOHFC and FedNor funding to make improvements at our dock and what we call our Pool 6 lands area. That's where the cruise ship is docking. We needed to create a lot of partnerships. City of Thunder Bay and the CDC, we really needed to work collaboratively to ensure that we had everything that the cruise ship needed. And one thing that was very important is we needed to create partnerships with local businesses. And one in particular was Mint Air. And that was an organized business that could provide the luggage and check-in services. That was something that we didn't realize that Viking didn't do on their own. So we were very fortunate that we were able to pivot really quickly and the company was able to expand and be able to provide those services. So cruise shipping has really opened up opportunities for further development at our waterfront. It's created that momentum, as I said before. We do have a new art gallery development at our waterfront. So it's kind of spurring all this activity. We are very happy that Science North has announced that their preferred location is to be at our Thunder Bay waterfront Pool 6 lands. And we hope that that's really going to be the catalyst for a whole bunch more development. And we see further expansion in the cruise shipping for Thunder Bay. So thank you for the opportunity to share our little story and look forward to the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Jamie. I can't tell you, the five of us together are always so excited to hear about these great examples and projects. And it's just as valuable for us to take part today as it is, I think, for the audience. So
absolutely.
So I'm here in Sudbury, and I don't think anyone will be surprised that I'm going to talk about battery electric vehicles today. Certainly Sudbury and Northern Ontario are fundamental to the critical minerals discussion, and I'm sure everyone on the call has it at top of mind somewhere on our list of priorities and opportunities. Sudbury is absolutely leaning into the opportunity to really take our place as the global hub for green mining and critical minerals associated with battery electric vehicles and electrification. To add to the great numbers that we're seeing here today, you can see that in Sudbury, we do have some significant mining companies in Vale and Glencore and KGHM, but we also have a really vibrant ecosystem of over 300 mining supply and service firms, employing about 14,000 people with $5 billion in annual exports. So that gives us the opportunity, though, to talk about the fact that Sudbury really is leading the transformation globally to the electrification of mines itself. Our friends in Kirkland Lake will be very familiar with this, having a 98% electric mine there. And a lot of those companies are based in Sudbury. So we have the expertise, we have the ingredients in the ground, as many of us do. And we also feel really strongly that Sudbury has that pedigree when it comes to not only mining, but reclamation and regreening. Over 40 years of regreening the environment has left Sudbury in a better place than it was before. And so this really ties in beautifully, frankly, to the discussion around electrification and battery electric vehicles. So with this in mind, we actually hosted our first, what will become an annual conference called BEV Mines to Mobility. I wanted to call it Farm to Table, but we weren't sure everyone would get the reference. But the idea is that you've got all of the ingredients to bring it to the market. And we had just a wonderful response. The interesting thing was that it was obviously the usual suspects when it comes to mining expertise and innovation. We also had an entirely new audience of automakers, federal and provincial ministries who haven't necessarily paid a lot of attention. Indigenous communities had a wonderful panel and participation from Indigenous communities. And really, it became clear that we have an opportunity to position Northern Ontario as the crux point and the connector between the raw materials and the expertise we have across Northern Ontario and the automakers and the auto manufacturing powerhouse that is Southern Ontario. And so that's really the opportunity we're seizing now. We continue to work with our post-secondary education. We have NORCAT, we have a regional innovation center. Cambrian College is just building its battery electric vehicle laboratory in the Center for Smart Mining. Collège Boreal has added technicians courses for working on electric vehicles, electric pieces of technology. And so we really feel like we have all of the ingredients, and all of us here play a key role in this opportunity. And we, as I said, we really use that term hub seriously, because we also know that we need to attract talent. We need housing solutions, we need immigration, all of these kinds of things. So I think that's really, I bring that up because I would think that, all of us have those on our list as well. And when we are talking about these opportunities between our communities, it really is a holistic view. We understand that you have to fit all these pieces together in order to succeed with these. And labor force, workforce, and immigration and housing is all key. And so I think what you're really seeing is we have expertise in our individual communities for these opportunities, but we also learn from each other, lean on each other all the time, and we can make a lot of noise together. So I think for us, we're really excited about the opportunities presented around BEV and the critical minerals here in Sudbury. And you can be certain that we will bring the North with us. One example I wanted to mention is that we were invited recently by Global Affairs Canada and the Consul Generals, the trade commissioners in New York, Boston, and Chicago to take part in an investment roadshow in the US. And myself and one of Rick's team from Sault Ste. Marie were there, and we talked a lot about our individual communities, the projects you're hearing about today, but we also talked a lot about Northern Ontario as a whole. And we had a really good audience of early stage startups, innovators, business people in all three of those major markets who know more now about Northern Ontario than they did before. And that is a direct result of our participation and cooperation across the 5 cities and across Northern Ontario. So, and as for Sudbury, BEV conversation was front and center for us during that week of the investment roadshow. So I'm just trying to tie things together here for you in terms of how the BEV fits in there. And I'll pass the next slide to Erin.
Thanks, Meredith. And great points. That's really what ONEDC is all about, right? Is today we're talking about this individual innovative initiatives that we have going on in our own communities, but as you can see, it all fits together as part of the picture for helping to grow Northern Ontario. So today I wanted to talk briefly about community improvement plans, because as we all know, there's various legislations that govern how municipalities can operate, and in turn that affects economic development. So here, of course, in Ontario, where we work within the confines of the Municipal Act, but we also have things like the Planning Act, which actually allows us to create some tools that can help spur economic development. And I'm talking about a community improvement plan. So for us, in economic development, I've always believed that working closely, creatively and collaboratively with your municipal colleagues is a great way to create and implement innovative municipal programming that can help support your community and help set you apart. And so an example here in North Bay is our community improvement plan. And we first got into this realm actually back early in the early 2000s, 2002 was when we launched our first program. It was specific to downtown. We had some great successes with that program. We saw some reinvestment in downtown properties, increases in property values, more businesses moved downtown. And so in 2009, we pivoted and we actually adopted a community improvement plan for our airport industrial business park, which helped us attract new interest and investment in the industrial park as well. Since then, we've decided to reimagine our community improvement plan. And the reason I wanted to focus on that for you today is because amid the pandemic, with the support of our municipal council, we were able to launch our new growth community incentive program, which at the time I would say is actually one of the most comprehensive plans in Ontario. It does include 4 target areas, which has not traditionally been the case in a lot of community improvement plans. So we wanted to focus on supporting growth in the industrial sector. We wanted to keep focus on our downtown. We recognize that housing, of course, is a growing concern for all. And as many communities do, we wanted to focus on investment in our waterfront area. So since inception, you can see some of our stats here. And I say again, inception in 2020 for this program. We've actually processed 45 applications that represent a total private sector investment of over 108 million. And what that's done for us is it's allowed us to leverage our 1.5 investment of municipal contributions to really see the growth and the development in new residential units, in facade improvements, and of course in job creation. So you can see some of those stats. Those projects I mentioned are expected to project 248 new residential units and 250 plus jobs when it comes to seasonal part-time and full-time jobs relating to those projects. Really exciting for us. And what we've done is we've tried to incorporate many community elements into our specific target areas. So for example, things that are crucial and critical for us moving forward in terms of downtown redevelopment, we wanted to include things not just like building facade improvements and utilizing upper stories, but we also wanted to include things that can help with the overall feel of our downtown waterfront core. So supporting public art. We wanted to include parking and landscaping. We also provided incentives in there for business that can help attract them to the downtown core. So things like rebates on transit passes for their staff and or parking fees for the downtown for staff who are coming to work downtown. So we took a holistic approach to reimagining our CIP. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention today as our example here in North Bay, because I do think community improvement plans are great tools that economic developers can have in their pocket and help set your communities apart. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that the stories you've heard from my colleagues today are a great way for us to showcase our individual communities, but they also help us when we're working with our provincial and federal colleagues. So for example, within the province, we spend quite a bit of time talking to colleagues who are charged with trade and investment marketing, and having these stories, these programs, as well as our collective effort around marketing and promotion really, I think, help share our story with our provincial and federal colleagues who are also involved in that realm. So it's been very helpful for us to be able to put these projects forward and let them know what's going on in Northern Ontario as they promote Northern Ontario and Ontario globally. With that, I'll turn it back over to Christy for final comments and questions. Thank you, everybody.
You're on mute again.
Sorry, I like to be on mute. So just a little bit of information. Thanks, Aaron. What we've learned is collectively we work a lot better and we are stronger as a united voice with government, with the funding agencies, because we are working on pan-northern initiatives. We were working on immigration initiatives several years ago to really start to build that awareness. Now we're seeing with immigration and the RNIP program, the cooperation we're all sharing with that, but collectively we helped shape the RNIP program so that each of our communities could get a piece of that puzzle and stimulate immigration in our own communities, because we all need job growth and we all need talent and we all need to grow our communities. So that was very beneficial. We worked with the federal agencies and FedNor to kind of position how we would like to see the North roll out in terms of the immigration and RNIP project. But I want to have a clear message that all of us are available to speak with representatives from economic development from smaller communities. We can share our examples, we can share our expertise. We're only a phone call away, and now with technology, you can connect via WebEx or Zoom. So we really do take our role in terms of working collaboratively very seriously, and we want communities to feel free to connect with any one of us to share their thoughts and ideas. So if anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
So thank you to the 6 of you for presenting this morning. I've had a couple of texts and one email from I'll try not to be a homer, as just to be clear for everybody. I'm a city councilor with the city of North Bay. And so I'm quite proud of the work that Erin and her team do. But again, I'll keep my FONOM hat on, and I won't just have Erin just talk for the next 25 minutes. The one question I have is in regards to First Nation partnerships. Is the fact that we're just wondering, because of the ingenuity and the resources that the First Nations communities across the North have, how does ONEDC or individually as municipalities, do you have alliances and partnerships with the First Nations communities so that you can work collaboratively together?
I think I can answer that more from an individual community perspective versus ONEDC as a whole. We certainly do work and welcome work with Indigenous partners on ONEDC, but in Timmins, we have an MOU with Mushkegowuk Tribal Council, and we're working on one with Walbin Tribal Council. So we do collectively work with the Indigenous communities, all new industry. We encourage them to consult, inform, and work with Indigenous communities, not just mining projects, but larger projects that would impact them as well. So we have open dialogue and communication with them in Timmins. The municipal council has an Indigenous relations committee as well. So that is something they are striving to work on and get the message out in Timmins, but we are certainly working more collectively with Indigenous organizations. So maybe I'll pass it over to Meredith and we can go through each one.
Sure, thanks, Christy. I don't know if I can go through all of them, but I think I would echo what Christy said. So really at this point, there are sector-specific opportunities where there is absolutely interest and collaboration with Indigenous communities. I mentioned the involvement of communities at the BEV conference. For instance, we're in active conversation with our neighboring communities. I think it's important to note that each community across Northern Ontario has its own strategic plan, its own objectives, and its own approach to how it wants to work with its neighbors. And we certainly look for opportunities to engage in those conversations at the individual level. I know in Sudbury here, for instance, we're engaging both Wahnapitae First Nation and Atikameksheng, Anishinaabeg, when it comes to cultural awareness and education for city employees, for instance. It's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction. So I might open it up to my colleagues if there's any other examples they'd like to add here.
Yeah, I could add for Sault Ste. Marie, we are working with the Garden River First Nation here, as well as with the Batchewana First Nation on opportunities in, I spoke earlier to green hydrogen, so we've definitely had some conversations with them as well. Garden River First Nations and the city of Sault Ste. Marie are in the process right now of fulfilling a CD application, which is a Community Economic Development Initiative, which really brings together First Nations and the city in a structured format to help us better understand the opportunities and work forward on any projects that are coming up. So that's where we stand right now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for those. Actually, I have a specific question for Jamie. And it's regarding, were you aware that Parry Sound also has cruise ships that are making a play in their community? Do you work with Navi and Vlad in regards to partnerships in regards to the cruise ship industry?
I'm not sure if we work with them directly, but I can check with my tourism lead staff and definitely make that connection if it's not already happening.
Okay. Meredith, as you were going through your presentation and you were talking about the batteries and working with the auto industry, during the conference that you held last year that you said is going to be an annual, which I think is quite exciting. Have you, is SpaceX and Tesla, were they engaged in that process? Do you know?
Great question, and I get that question all the time. I can say that certainly Tesla is a major player in the battery electric vehicle sphere, and maybe less so SpaceX, but I do think that we are absolutely engaging with different companies and different opportunities in the space. We also, I see a question in here, how do we work with the TIM unit? And I think that's a good segue. Actually, we work closely with Invest Ontario, our trade and investment unit, our friends at FedNor, and those kinds of conversations like Tesla are absolutely top of mind for us as we go forward to pursue opportunities.
And the reason I bring that up, Meredith, is the fact that FONOM has a relationship, previous relationship with SpaceX. The last 2 years ago, during our virtual conference, we had a vice president of SpaceX present and talk about their projects and then the implications for Canada. So, and not just Starlink. So maybe we'll chat offline to see about making those connections. So just maybe strengthen those relationships. So you're right. So we've got Hearst is wanting to work with all of you. So just, I'm sure you're going to get reached out. And then there was the question about the TIMS unit. So if, are any of you able just to talk about, because lots of people aren't aware of the TIMS unit. They're in our communities, and so I'm just wondering if one of you are able just to kind of touch on your relationship and what how that works with the ONEDC or your own economic development agency.
Erin, you want to take that?
Sure, I can tackle that one, and thanks for the great question. We are so fortunate to have our provincial colleagues in the TIM unit available to work with ONEDC and our individual communities, and I'd say that's exactly how we do it. We like to provide TIM unit, Todd and the gang, with an update from ONEDC whenever possible. We invite Todd to sort of our in-person meetings or virtual meetings once in a while, so we can share some dialogue around what the TIM unit's doing and how we can collaborate as a group. And then individually, because TIM has expertise in a variety of sectors and are very tied into our other provincial colleagues as well, we as individual communities collaborate on individual project leads with TIM unit members, which has always been greatly appreciated and something that's been really helping us on our investment attraction side of things.
Thank you. Thanks, Erin. So the next question is in regards to the specific to export program. Can you provide a brief overview of how our businesses in my community can apply, where to direct them, as well as what do they required for application, probably above the $100 or $200 or $500,000 in annual sales? So I think
and so I have included in the chat a link to investnorthernontario.com and the NOE's specific section of that website. So you'll see all of our program information along with our guidelines, our application materials. But really, I would suggest that either kind of groups in your individual communities or individual companies just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions and work through that process with companies who might be interested. Just briefly, yes, we have application process for those companies who are kind of self-selected and that we help them identify that they are in fact eligible for the 2 different programs we're accepting applications for. There is a 1 or 2 stage application process. It's not a black box. It's not something where somebody puts an application in and they might hear something back a year from now with no rationale. That's not how we operate. We're here to help companies through the process and ultimately to help them move forward to our committee with success. So we're a very kind of friendly and engaged program. So my recommendation was just go to our website and most importantly, just reach out to me directly.
Well, thank you very
And
much.
actually, and I want to make it clear, it's not just myself on the program. You've got the ONEDC representatives here. And so the Northern Ontario Exports Program is a program of all of those municipalities. So if you know, for those folks and companies within the 5 communities, they can go directly to their economic development leaders for information on the program. And for those that might fall out of those catchment areas, please contact me directly.
Thank you. Meredith, when you were presenting and you were chatting about the tour that you did with one of your colleagues from Sault Ste. Marie in the Northeast, and what was the general perception or their previous knowledge of what Northern Ontario had to offer?
That's a great question. So we find, especially in that kind of space, and coming from Sudbury, they either know exactly what Sudbury is about because they're in the mining space, and Sudbury is one of those kind of biggies when it comes to that, or they don't know anything about us at all. And most of the time they don't know anything about us at all as Northern Ontario. So we often spend the first few minutes of any conversation in a B2B kind of space talking about geography, talking about where we are relative to Toronto, and often where we are relative to Niagara Falls, because I'll tell you, people know things like Niagara Falls, but they don't know everywhere else. So we talk about geography, we talk about the vast space and then the assets and the opportunities. But I was very pleasantly surprised in those spaces because Global Affairs and Trade Commissioner staff had done such a good job in matching us. We actually had a pretty good awareness of Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie, I think, among those businesses, because they had really matched us. We had everyone had done a profile on opportunities and strengths on both sides. So there was a matching piece that happened. But I'll tell you, I would say most of us do spend time explaining what Northern Ontario is and where we might be relative to other things before we get into our individual community attributes, which is another reason for the history and the genesis of ONEDC. We know that Northern Ontario is not well understood, and it makes much more sense for us to talk about each other collectively. So thank you.
Thank you for that. My last question, and again, I'm going to take my FONOM hat off and put my counselor hat on. And Aaron, if you can just maybe just chat for just a few moments in regards to the BRNE program. And how important it is to not North Bay, but also is to any community that wants to look at it. And because I believe that it's easier to keep a business and support a business that's already there than attract a new one. You've been involved from the program right from the beginning. So I'm just wondering if you can just spend a couple of seconds just chatting about that, and hopefully anybody that's on the call or watching on the YouTube video later, if they do have questions and want to start a program, Aaron's door is always open to them.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the great comment and lead in, Mac. You're so right. Business retention and expansion is so important to all of our communities. And I think I can speak on behalf of the ONEDC gang here today that a lot of time and effort is spent with our existing companies to help support their efforts, whether it's through an NOE program or through individual company visits. It's something we all take very, very seriously, because there does need to be that balance between investment attraction and the growth and retention of our existing companies. So really, really important. In terms of programs, there's a lot of supports available, actually. So of course, our door is always open here in North Bay, and I know my colleagues feel the same way. If anyone is interested in starting a BRNE program, business retention and expansion, but doesn't already have one or know where the tools are, reach out. We're happy to share our past experiences. We're happy to share the provincial and international tools that exist to get you going. But we've always found here in North Bay that it's such an important part of what we do. Because it's a great way to open up the communication lines with our businesses and hear about, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I always say. And you can't improve if you don't know what your challenges are. And so we make a real point of doing that on a regular basis. We did just finish a large community-wide blitz with a program where we've published sort of our results and our findings, and now we're working through that implementation. But it is something that we believe strongly in, and we do on a regular basis. So we're always out there trying to hit companies that we work with regularly, and also reach companies we don't already have relationships with. So business retention expansion is a big part of economic development, and it's a big part of what we all do.
Well, thank you, Erin, and thanks to all of you for taking the time this morning to share your experiences, to share your knowledge with those that are on the call, and then again, those that will be watching the video later on. As a city councillor, I know that Erin's predecessor said to me, Mac, I know you want to be involved in economic development and you want to get right into the kitchen. But Rick sat me down and explained to me that the best thing a city councillor can do is help, aid, make your introductions, set good policy, and stay out of my way. So you all do a really good job in regards to supporting your own communities, and I know you're great in support of the communities that are surrounding you. So I want to thank you for your time. And